Imagine holding a silver coin small enough to disappear beneath two fingers. On one side is the profile of a queen. Her nose is strong, her chin is firm. A royal diadem binds her hair. Nothing about the image resembles the smooth, delicate face that later painters and filmmakers would give her. The coin was not designed to answer whether she was beautiful. It was designed to announce that she ruled. Her name was Cleopatra. And the first thing her surviving portrait tells us is that appearance was political. For more than 2,000 years, Cleopatra has been introduced as a woman whose beauty conquered men. The story is neat, memorable, and almost completely inadequate. It turns negotiations into flirtation, alliances into romances, and a 21-year reign into a sequence of dramatic entrances. It also makes the Roman leaders around her look strangely helpless. Julius Caesar and Mark Antony had survived wars, conspiracies, and brutal political contests. Neither man was likely to abandon judgment merely because an attractive monarch entered the room. The ancient evidence points in another direction. Plutarch, writing generations after Cleopatra's death, did not describe a beauty so overwhelming that no one could resist looking at her. He emphasized conversation, voice, intelligence, and presence. That description matters because charisma cannot be recovered from a statue. A sculpted head can preserve a hairstyle. A coin can display a diadem. Neither can show how quickly someone understood a question, how carefully she listened, or how she shifted from one language to another while watching the reaction across a table. Cleopatra's real advantage may have appeared gradually. A visitor might first notice the queen's clothing, jewelry, or ceremonial setting. Then she began to speak. She remembered names. She understood the politics of a distant province. She knew when a guest needed flattery and when he needed a warning. She could make a meeting feel personal without forgetting that every word served the interests of Egypt. By the end of the conversation, the visitor might discover that the queen had quietly taken control of the room. That kind of power is difficult to represent in popular art. Beauty can be painted in a single image. Administrative skill requires years of records. A dramatic romance can be summarized in a scene. Tax policy, irrigation, grain storage, temple patronage, and diplomatic correspondence are slower stories. Yet those slower stories explain why Cleopatra remained on the throne, while older kingdoms around her were absorbed into Roman power. She did not inherit a secure state. She inherited a wealthy but vulnerable kingdom that had spent decades borrowing Roman protection. The Cleopatra of modern imagination was created layer by layer. Roman poets helped turn her into a dangerous foreign temptress. Later writers made her a tragic lover. Renaissance artists dressed her like a European court lady. Theater gave her speeches that no ancient source recorded. Cinema placed her beneath gold crowns, surrounded her with enormous staircases, and selected actresses whose beauty was already legendary. After centuries of repetition, the performance became more familiar than the ruler. To move closer to the historical Cleopatra, it helps to begin with uncertainty. We do not possess her private diary. We do not have a complete archive of her government. Most surviving literary accounts were written by men connected to the world that defeated her. Some wrote long after her death. They could admire her intelligence while still repeating hostile stories. They could preserve genuine details and political caricature in the same paragraph. Reading them requires patience, skepticism, and an occasional willingness to admit that the answer has vanished. Even her face remains uncertain. Coins issued during her reign offer the clearest official portraits, but coin portraits were not photographs. They conveyed dynasty, authority, and legitimacy. Some show a prominent nose and chin that connect Cleopatra visually with her Ptolemaic ancestors. Others pair her face with Antony's in ways that may emphasize partnership rather than physical accuracy. Sculptures identified as Cleopatra are often disputed. A beautiful marble head may represent her, another queen, or a woman imitating royal fashion. The lack of certainty is not a disappointment. It is a useful correction. Cleopatra's importance does not depend on the precise shape of her face. She ruled Egypt from her late teens until her death at 39. She survived exile, civil war, a siege in Alexandria, the murder of Caesar, the reorganization of the Roman world, and a final conflict that ended the Roman Republic. She made decisions that affected grain supplies, royal finances, Eastern Mediterranean diplomacy, and the future of Rome itself. Her world began long before her birth. When Alexander of Macedon conquered Egypt, he entered a land with thousands of years of royal tradition. After Alexander died, his generals divided much of his empire. Ptolemy, one of those commanders, established himself in Egypt and eventually took the title of king. His descendants ruled for nearly 3 centuries. They were Macedonian Greek monarchs governing an ancient Egyptian kingdom, and from the beginning, they had to speak in more than one political language. In Alexandria, the dynasty presented itself as Hellenistic and royal. Greek was the language of the court and much of the administration. The city faced the Mediterranean and welcomed merchants, sailors, scholars, officials, and immigrants from many regions. Beyond Alexandria, temples continued ancient Egyptian religious traditions. Priests recorded decrees in Egyptian scripts. Rural communities depended on the Nile. Local institutions and agricultural rhythms much older than the Ptolemies themselves. The dynasty learned to appear differently to different audiences. In Greek-style portraits, rulers wore diadems and adopted the visual language of Hellenistic monarchy. In Egyptian temples, they appeared as pharaohs making offerings to the gods. This was not necessarily deception. Ancient kingship had always relied on ceremony, and Ptolemaic rule existed within several traditions at once. A ruler could be a Macedonian monarch in Alexandria and a pharaoh in a temple relief without considering those identities contradictory. The Ptolemies also developed a family strategy that made their palace unusually dangerous. Royal siblings often married one another. The custom echoed divine and earlier royal models, but it also kept claims to the throne concentrated inside the household. That concentration did not create harmony. It created more people with legitimate royal blood and fewer safe places for them to stand. Brothers, sisters, mothers, sons, and daughters repeatedly competed for power. Exile, imprisonment, and murder became recognizable features of succession. Cleopatra was born into this environment around the end of the 1st century before the Common Era. Her father was Ptolemy XII, often called Auletes, the flute player. His nickname suggests an interest in music, though his reign demanded far more than artistic enthusiasm. He faced domestic opposition, financial strain, and constant pressure from Rome. His authority depended heavily on recognition from Roman leaders, and recognition was expensive. Rome had become the dominant power of the Mediterranean. It did not yet govern Egypt directly, but Egyptian rulers understood that Roman friendship could determine who remained on the throne. Ptolemy XII paid enormous sums to influential Romans and accumulated debts while seeking security. To Egyptian subjects, such payments could look like weakness or exploitation. To the king, they were the price of survival. Cleopatra grew up watching a monarch trade money for time. When her father was forced into exile, the lesson became even clearer. A ruler could possess a crown and still lose the capital. A daughter could see her family scattered, while Roman politicians debated whether restoration would be profitable. Cleopatra may have accompanied her father during part of his exile, though the details are uncertain. What is certain is that his eventual return depended on Roman military support. Egypt's monarchy had not been conquered, but its independence had become conditional. This political education was more severe than any classroom. Cleopatra learned that Rome was not a single mind. It was a competitive republic filled with senators, generals, lenders, factions, and personal rivalries. One Roman might support an Egyptian king because another opposed him. A promise made in 1 year might become useless after an election or a military defeat. To negotiate with Rome, a ruler needed to understand not only institutions but personalities. She also grew up in Alexandria, one of the most intellectually celebrated cities of the ancient world. The famous library had suffered losses and changes before her lifetime, and later, legend makes it seem more complete and orderly than it probably was. Yet Alexandria remained a center of scholarship. Books, scientific learning, medicine, geography, philosophy, and literary culture. Royal children were educated within a court that valued Greek learning as part of its prestige. We cannot reconstruct Cleopatra's exact curriculum. Claims that she mastered every science should be treated carefully. Ancient praise often turned educated rulers into universal scholars. Still, the evidence strongly suggests that she was highly trained in rhetoric and languages. Those were not decorative accomplishments. Rhetoric taught a ruler how to arrange an argument, read an audience, and speak persuasively. Languages allowed her to reduce dependence on interpreters and to present herself as unusually attentive to the people she addressed. Plutarch lists several peoples with whom she could communicate, and remarks that earlier members of her dynasty had not even learned Egyptian. The list may reflect admiration as much as precise linguistic testing. No ancient examiner left us scores from a royal language lesson. Even so, the central point is credible. Cleopatra was remembered as a ruler who used languages actively and who learned the language of the country her family governed. That choice carried political weight. For generations, Ptolemaic monarchs had relied on Greek-speaking administration while ruling millions of Egyptian speakers. Cleopatra's use of Egyptian allowed her to approach priests and subjects in a way her ancestors had not. It did not erase social divisions, and it did not transform the dynasty into a modern national monarchy, but it gave her another instrument of legitimacy. She could be heard not only as a Greek queen, but as an Egyptian pharaoh. Language also created intimacy. An ambassador speaking through an interpreter always gives away part of the conversation. The pause before translation can hide hesitation. A joke may vanish. A threat may become too strong or too weak. Cleopatra could listen directly. She could notice an accent, respond with a familiar phrase, and turn a formal meeting into a personal exchange. This ability probably contributed more to her reputation than any cosmetic detail. Her education occurred under the shadow of succession. Ptolemy XII had several children, and the royal family had already shown how quickly siblings could become enemies. One of Cleopatra's sisters ruled during their father's exile and was executed after his restoration. That event would have made the dangers impossible to ignore. The throne was not merely a future honor, it was a position surrounded by people who might kill to prevent someone else from holding it. When Ptolemy XII died, Cleopatra was about 18. His arrangements paired her with a younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. Royal tradition expected joint rule and probably a sibling marriage. The boy was still a child, which meant that adult courtiers around him possessed practical power. Cleopatra, older and better prepared, appears to have tried to rule with considerable independence. Early documents and coinage suggest that she presented herself forcefully as sovereign. This was not simply youthful confidence. Egypt needed visible authority. The kingdom faced debt, political tension, and the challenge of satisfying Rome without appearing to surrender to it. Poor Nile floods had likely increased hardship in the years around her accession. Grain shortages could raise prices, weaken tax revenue, and sharpen public anger. A new queen could not afford to appear uncertain while officials, priests, landholders, soldiers, and urban crowds watched for weakness. Her brother's advisors had their own interests. Pothinus, an influential eunuch, the general Achillas, and the teacher Theodotus became associated with the young king's court. An adult queen capable of governing independently threatened men whose authority depended on controlling a child. The conflict did not begin because Cleopatra was too beautiful or too ambitious. It began because two royal centers claimed power, and only one could dominate the government. Within a few years, Cleopatra was pushed out of Alexandria. The surviving evidence does not reveal every stage of her defeat. Court struggles often leave behind results rather than transcripts. Her name disappears from some official acts. Her rivals gain control of the capital. Eventually, she fled east and began gathering military support. At an age when many modern people are still deciding what work suits them, Cleopatra was raising forces to invade her own kingdom. Exile revealed the quality that would define much of her reign. She did not wait passively for rescue. She organized. Eastern regions connected to Egypt offered soldiers, money, and political contacts. Royal supporters who had lost position under the new regime had reasons to join her. She prepared to return by force, while her brother's government moved troops toward the frontier. Egypt stood on the edge of civil war. Then a Roman civil war arrived first. Julius Caesar and Pompey had once been allies. Their partnership collapsed, and the Roman Republic divided behind them. After defeat, Pompey fled toward Egypt, expecting refuge from a dynasty that owed him favors. The advisors of Ptolemy XIII faced a difficult calculation. Welcoming Pompey might anger Caesar. Refusing him might offend a famous Roman commander who could recover. They chose murder. Pompey was killed as he approached the Egyptian shore. The advisors apparently hoped that presenting his death to Caesar would demonstrate loyalty. Instead, when Caesar arrived, the act exposed them as men willing to kill a guest and former benefactor. Caesar had fought Pompey, but Roman political rivalry did not erase family ties, shared history, or the value Romans placed on controlling the manner of a rival's defeat. Caesar now entered Alexandria with a limited force and enormous authority. He also had financial claims against the Ptolemaic government. The dead king had owed substantial sums, and Caesar had every reason to intervene in the succession dispute. He could present himself as executor of Ptolemy's will, mediator between the siblings, defender of Roman interests, and creditor. In ancient politics, one man could wear several convenient hats at once. For Cleopatra, Caesar's arrival created danger and opportunity. If he supported her brother, her campaign might collapse. If she could persuade him that her rule offered greater stability, she might regain the throne without first defeating the Egyptian army. The difficulty was access. Her opponents controlled Alexandria and the palace. She needed to reach Caesar before they defined her as a rebel who threatened order. The famous solution has been retold so often that it feels like legend. Cleopatra entered the royal quarters secretly with the help of a loyal attendant named Apollodorus. Plutarch says she was carried inside a bundle of bedding. Later imagination upgraded the bundle into a magnificent carpet. The exact fabric matters less than the courage of the decision. She placed herself physically inside a guarded palace where enemies controlled the doors. When the bundle was opened, Caesar did not encounter an abstract claimant described by hostile advisors. He encountered the queen herself. She could explain the will, the court struggle, and the economic importance of restoring effective government. She could demonstrate the rhetorical and linguistic skills for which she later became famous. Above all, she could make Caesar judge her directly. The meeting has often been reduced to seduction because Cleopatra and Caesar later became lovers. That reduction ignores their immediate political interests. Caesar needed Egypt's debts addressed and its grain supply stable. Cleopatra needed Roman support against her brother. Both understood that the other possessed something essential. Attraction may have existed, but attraction alone did not resolve a succession crisis. Negotiation did. Caesar announced a settlement that restored joint rule between Cleopatra and her brother. For the advisors around Ptolemy, this was unacceptable. They had not removed Cleopatra merely to watch a Roman general return her to authority. Achilles brought the Egyptian army toward Alexandria, and the political dispute became a siege. Caesar, Cleopatra, her brother, and rival courtiers were trapped within a city divided street by street. The Alexandrian War is sometimes treated as an adventurous interlude in Caesar's life. For Cleopatra, it was the moment her future could disappear in a single night. Caesar had only a few thousand men at first. The Egyptian forces were much larger and knew the city. Control of the harbor, palace district, water, and supply routes became vital. Fighting spread through streets and along the waterfront. Parts of the city burned during the struggle. The famous Library of Alexandria is often said to have been destroyed in this fire. The reality is more complicated. Ancient sources disagree about what burned, and the library was not one simple building whose fate can be described in a single sentence. Scrolls stored near the harbor may have been lost. Later collections continued to exist. The image of every book vanishing at once belongs more to modern tragedy than to secure evidence. Cleopatra remained with Caesar through the crisis. This detail is easy to overlook. She was not waiting safely in another province while Roman soldiers decided her future. If the palace fell, her brother's supporters would have had little reason to spare her. Her decision to approach Caesar had tied her survival to his. She had exchanged the uncertainty of exile for the immediate danger of siege because the possible reward was the throne. Reinforcements eventually reached Caesar. In the fighting that followed, Ptolemy XIII died, apparently drowning as his forces collapsed near the Nile. The advisors who had opposed Cleopatra were killed or removed. The civil war ended with Cleopatra restored as queen. Yet Ptolemaic custom and Egyptian political expectations still favored a male co-ruler. She was paired with another younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. In formal terms, the dynasty continued. In practical terms, Cleopatra held the power. Caesar could have annexed Egypt or placed it under direct Roman administration. He did not. An independent but allied Egyptian monarchy served his immediate interests. It could pay debts, supply grain, and provide regional stability without requiring Rome to govern the kingdom directly. Cleopatra's survival was therefore both personal triumph and strategic arrangement. This is the point where romantic legend often places the queen on a luxurious Nile cruise and allows politics to fade behind scenery. Ancient sources do mention travel together, though the details and scale are uncertain. What matters is that Cleopatra now had to govern a damaged kingdom. War had disrupted Alexandria. Rival factions remained. The treasury faced pressure. Roman friendship had restored her, but too much visible dependence on Rome could weaken her legitimacy at home. She also gave birth to a son named Ptolemy Caesar, commonly called Caesarion. Cleopatra presented him as Caesar's child. Caesar never publicly established him as his Roman heir. Roman inheritance and Egyptian dynastic politics did not follow the same rules, and Caesar already had family obligations in Rome. Still, Caesarion offered Cleopatra something valuable. He linked her dynasty symbolically to the most powerful Roman of the age. Motherhood did not replace kingship. Cleopatra continued to appear as ruler, issue decrees, oversee finances, and shape religious presentation. In Egyptian temple imagery, she could be connected with Isis, the divine mother whose son Horus inherited royal legitimacy. Caesarion could be presented within that ancient framework. To Egyptian audiences, the language of mother and divine child carried meanings far older than Rome. The queen who returned from exile was no longer an untested teenager. She had watched a Roman army fight inside her capital. She had seen how quickly allies could become necessary and how dangerous dependence could be. She had learned that Roman politics could save her throne, but also that Egypt's fate might be decided by conflicts that began thousands of miles away. Her task now was to use Roman power without allowing it to swallow her kingdom. That balance would define the rest of her life. Egypt possessed what Rome wanted. The Nile Valley produced enormous grain surpluses when flood levels and administration cooperated. Alexandria connected Mediterranean commerce with routes leading toward the Red Sea, Arabia, and lands farther east. Papyrus, glass, textiles, oils, perfumes, metals, and luxury goods moved through its markets. Control of Egypt meant access to wealth, food, and strategic ports, but the picture of a permanently rich kingdom can be misleading. Royal wealth depended on the labor of farmers, craftsmen, sailors, clerks, and transport workers. Taxes could be heavy. Bureaucratic demands reached into villages through officials and contractors. Floods might fail. Prices might rise. A kingdom admired abroad for abundance could contain communities struggling to meet payments. Cleopatra did not rule a treasury that filled itself. She ruled a complex extraction system that required constant maintenance. Her government inherited institutions developed over centuries. Land was classified, surveyed, taxed, leased, donated to temples, or controlled through royal arrangements. Officials recorded harvests and obligations. Grain moved toward storage centers and river ports. The Nile was both a gift and a logistical challenge. A successful flood did not become royal revenue until crops were grown, collected, measured, transported, protected, and sold. Cleopatra's intelligence as a ruler should not be imagined as personally checking every field. Ancient monarchy operated through layers of administration. Her role was to appoint, supervise, reward, punish, and decide broad priorities. A queen who understood revenue could ask better questions. She could recognize when an official's report sounded too convenient. She could adjust coinage, negotiate exemptions, or redirect resources during crisis. Government often depended on knowing where to look when numbers stopped making sense. Coins from her reign are therefore more than portraits. They belong to the machinery of rule. Bronze currency circulated through local markets, tax payments, wages, and daily exchange. Evidence suggests reforms to bronze weight standards during her reign. Such changes may sound less dramatic than a royal barge, but they reveal a government addressing practical economic problems. Every adjustment affected people buying grain, paying workers, or settling accounts. Her image on coins also asserted continuity. The diadem identified a Hellenistic monarch. Her features echoed dynastic portrait traditions. The inscription proclaimed royal authority. In a kingdom where many subjects would never see the queen in person, a coin placed her name and face into thousands of hands. It reminded merchants and officials that transactions occurred beneath a sovereign who intended to be recognized. At temples, another version of royal identity appeared. Cleopatra supported Egyptian cults and took part in traditions that presented the monarch as caretaker of divine order. Temple reliefs show rulers offering to gods according to ancient conventions. These images do not reveal private belief in a modern sense. They reveal public duty. A pharaoh maintained temples, supported priesthoods, participated in festivals, and protected the relationship between land, kingship, and the divine. Cleopatra's connection with Isis became especially important. Isis was associated with queenship, motherhood, protection, and the restoration of rightful order. The goddess had worshippers across the Mediterranean, making her both deeply Egyptian and widely recognizable. Cleopatra's use of this imagery did not mean that she spent every day pretending to be a goddess. It meant that royal ceremony connected her reign to a powerful religious model. In Greek and Egyptian settings, she could present complementary faces of monarchy. To Greek-speaking elites, she was a learned Hellenistic queen, descended from Ptolemy. To Egyptian priests, she was a pharaoh who respected temple language. To Roman politicians, she was an allied sovereign whose resources mattered. Her political skill lay partly in moving among these roles, without allowing one to destroy the others. This flexibility has sometimes been mistaken for theatrical vanity. Ancient rulers, however, governed through display, clothing, titles, processions, coin portraits, temple scenes, and seating arrangements communicated hierarchy. Cleopatra understood that people often believe power after they see it performed. A royal entrance was not an escape from administration. It was one tool of administration. She eventually traveled to Rome and stayed there during part of Caesar's dictatorship. Her presence caused comment. A foreign queen living near the capital, accompanied by her court and young son, could not pass unnoticed. Caesar placed a golden image of Cleopatra in a temple connected with Venus, at least according to ancient testimony. The gesture carried religious and political meanings that later Romans found provocative. Cleopatra's time in Rome has inspired endless speculation. Did she advise Caesar on calendars? Did she expect him to marry her? Did she imagine Caesarion ruling both Egypt and Rome? The surviving evidence cannot support confident answers. Caesar introduced calendar reform with the help of Alexandrian expertise. But assigning a direct personal role to Cleopatra goes beyond what we know. She may have discussed politics with him. She may also have spent long hours managing Egyptian affairs from abroad. Her position remained precarious because Caesar's power was extraordinary and unstable. He had defeated his rivals and accumulated offices that made some Romans fear monarchy. Cleopatra came from a culture where kingship was normal. Rome officially despised kings, even while one man gathered authority that looked increasingly royal. Her presence allowed enemies to suggest that Caesar's ambitions were foreign, Eastern, and dangerous. The propaganda pattern was already forming. Instead of debating whether Caesar's reforms threatened republican government, critics could imagine an Egyptian queen whispering dreams of monarchy into his ear. Blaming a foreign woman simplified conflicts among Roman men. It also reduced Cleopatra's own strategy to personal influence, as though Egypt's queen had no political reason to secure a relationship with Rome's dominant leader. In the spring of the year Caesar was murdered, Cleopatra was still in or near Rome. The assassination destroyed the alliance on which her restored throne partly depended. Senators stabbed Caesar during a meeting, and then discovered that killing a dictator did not automatically restore a stable republic. Rome filled with panic. Supporters, assassins, veterans, crowds, and ambitious heirs all tried to understand what came next. Cleopatra had no reason to remain inside that uncertainty. She gathered her household and returned to Egypt. The journey was more than retreat. It was the movement of a sovereign back toward the institutions she controlled. In Rome, she was a foreign guest exposed to rumor. In Alexandria, she commanded a court, treasury, fleet, and administration. Survival meant returning to the place where her authority had roots. Soon after, her younger co-ruler, Ptolemy XIV, disappeared from the record, and Caesarion became her partner in kingship. Ancient writers suspected that Cleopatra arranged her brother's death. The suspicion is plausible within Ptolemaic politics, but certainty is impossible. What can be said is that his removal benefited her, and that royal siblings in the dynasty frequently met unnatural ends. Caesarion was still a child. Cleopatra ruled in his name and her own. She now presented the dynasty as mother and son, echoing the Isis and Horus pattern. The arrangement strengthened succession because her heir was no longer a brother who might develop an independent court. Yet, it also created a new danger. If Caesarion was accepted as Caesar's biological son, he could be useful to Cleopatra and threatening to Caesar's adopted heir. That adopted heir was Octavian. He was young, physically unimpressive to some observers, and burdened with a name far larger than his experience. He was also patient, intelligent, and willing to use law, money, soldiers, and propaganda with ruthless discipline. Caesar's will gave him what Cleopatra could not give, Caesarion, formal Roman adoption and inheritance. The future conflict between them had begun before either side openly acknowledged it. After Caesar's death, the Eastern Mediterranean did not become quiet. Armies moved, governors changed sides, and cities tried to guess which Roman faction would survive. Cleopatra's first responsibility was not to avenge Caesar or interfere in Roman ideology. It was to preserve Egypt. That meant choosing carefully when demands arrived from men who all claimed to represent Rome. One Roman commander, Dolabella, received Egyptian ships and money while fighting Caesar's assassins in the east. The assistance failed to save him. Cassius gained strength and then demanded support of his own. Cleopatra reportedly prepared to sail with a fleet toward the forces loyal to Caesar's heirs. But illness and weather disrupted the effort. The details are confused because later authors judged every decision according to the outcome. Her caution should not be mistaken for indecision. Egypt could not afford to commit everything to a Roman leader who might be dead by the next season. Cleopatra needed enough cooperation to avoid being labeled an enemy, but enough distance to protect her resources. She had already seen her father spend enormous sums purchasing Roman favor. She understood that Rome could consume a kingdom through requests long before it formally annexed it. The years after Caesar's death also brought hardship inside Egypt. Evidence points to poor Nile floods, disease, and food shortages during parts of the period. One decree associated with Cleopatra's reign attempted to protect Alexandria from grain being diverted out of necessary channels during scarcity. The surviving text is technical, but its significance is human. Behind every line stood bakers, families, merchants, and workers waiting for affordable food. A low flood could begin, a chain of trouble. Less water meant smaller harvests. Smaller harvests meant higher prices and lower taxable surplus. Farmers might borrow to meet obligations. Villages might lose seed grain. Urban crowds could become restless. Officials, merchants, and soldiers competed for supply. A queen praised abroad for luxury, sometimes governed while subjects counted bread. This contrast helps explain why ancient royal display should not be read as a national bank statement. Cleopatra could stage magnificent ceremonies because magnificence was part of monarchy. At the same time, her government could struggle with shortages. A palace might hold silver while a province lacked grain. Ancient states were powerful in some places and surprisingly fragile in others. Rome's civil war eventually produced a new arrangement. Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus formed a legal alliance with extraordinary powers. They defeated the assassins of Caesar and divided responsibility for Roman territories. Antony received command in the east. He needed money, supplies, ships, and cooperation from client rulers. Egypt was too important to ignore. Antony summoned Cleopatra to meet him at Tarsus. The official reason involved her behavior during the recent conflicts. Had she supported Cassius? Had she failed to provide enough assistance? Could she be trusted? A less confident ruler might have arrived quickly, apologized, and waited outside the Roman commander's quarters. Cleopatra delayed, prepared and transformed the summons into a negotiation between monarchs. The famous arrival on the river Cydnus comes from Plutarch and is rich with theatrical detail. A barge moved beneath purple sails. Silver oars kept rhythm with music. Fragrance drifted over the water. Cleopatra appeared in the visual role of Aphrodite, while attendants represented other divine figures. Crowds left Antony's tribunal to watch her approach, turning the Roman commander's formal reception into the queen's public spectacle. The scene may have been polished by literary tradition, but the strategy fits Cleopatra's political style. She understood that Antony expected a dependent ruler. She arrived as the embodiment of a wealthy kingdom. The imagery spoke to Greek audiences and connected her with divine beauty, abundance, and royal power. It also reminded everyone that Egypt possessed resources Antony needed. The purpose was not simply to make Antony fall in love. Cleopatra needed to clear accusations, protect her throne, secure regional influence, and eliminate dynastic rivals. Antony needed money for campaigns and a reliable base in the east. Their interests overlapped before their private relationship began. Romance may have strengthened the alliance, but the alliance had rational foundations. Cleopatra invited Antony to dine, reversing the expected direction of hospitality. Ancient stories emphasize the luxury of the entertainment, perhaps exaggerating its extravagance for effect. Yet the political message was unmistakable. Rome might command legions, but Alexandria could command wealth, ceremony, and culture. Antony was not meeting a frightened provincial. He was entering a royal world with its own confidence. Their relationship became personal. They spent time together in Alexandria, and later tradition delighted in stories of banquets, disguises, fishing jokes, and a social group sometimes translated as the inimitable livers. These stories humanize them, but they can also distract. While Antony enjoyed Alexandria, the Eastern Roman world remained filled with urgent business. Parthian power threatened Roman interests. Client kingdoms required supervision. Veterans expected rewards. Cleopatra used the renewed alliance to settle old dangers. Her sister Arsinoe had survived the Alexandrian War and lived in sanctuary at Ephesus. Arsinoe's existence offered opponents a potential alternative queen. At Cleopatra's request, Antony ordered her execution, despite the sacred location. The act was ruthless and politically comprehensible within the traditions of both Ptolemaic monarchy and Roman power. Cleopatra did not preserve her throne through charm alone. She removed threats. Modern retellings sometimes try to rescue Cleopatra from every harsh decision, as though intelligence must equal gentleness. Ancient rulers rarely enjoyed that option. They governed in political systems where defeated relatives became rallying points, and mercy could create future civil war. Recognizing this does not require admiration. It requires allowing Cleopatra the same complexity routinely granted to male monarchs. Antony eventually left Egypt to address Roman affairs. Cleopatra gave birth to twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene. Their names connected sun and moon, Greek monarchy, and dynastic ambition. Later, she had another son, Ptolemy Philadelphus. The children were not merely evidence of romance. They were pieces in a possible Eastern royal system. For several years, Antony and Cleopatra were apart. Antony married Octavia, Octavian's sister, in an attempt to repair the alliance between the Roman leaders. Octavia was respected, politically valuable, and capable. The marriage did not reduce Cleopatra to an abandoned lover. She continued governing Egypt. Her authority did not depend on Antony living permanently in Alexandria. This period reminds us how little of a reign survives when storytellers prefer romance. Cleopatra dealt with temple institutions, revenue, regional trade, coinage, and court appointments. She supervised a kingdom stretching along the Nile and holding interests beyond it. Ships moved between Alexandria, Cyprus, and eastern ports. Diplomatic messengers crossed deserts and seas. The royal office operated every day, including the days when no famous Roman was present. When Antony returned to the east, his need for Cleopatra became greater. Campaigns against Parthia required extraordinary resources. Egypt could supply money, grain, ships, and a secure political partnership. Cleopatra, in return, sought territories once connected to the Ptolemaic realm. Antony granted her control or revenue rights over regions in the eastern Mediterranean, though the exact legal arrangements varied, and later propaganda made them sound like gifts stolen from Rome. Their alliance now resembled a shared imperial project. Antony remained a Roman commander. Cleopatra remained Queen of Egypt. Neither simply became the servant of the other. They cooperated because each hoped to build a stable Eastern order that protected personal and dynastic interests. This arrangement frightened Octavian because it offered Antony a financial base beyond Italy and gave Cleopatra influence over lands Rome considered strategically essential. The Parthian campaign became a disaster. Antony advanced with a large army but suffered from supply problems, difficult terrain, enemy harassment, and failed coordination. Thousands died during the retreat. Ancient accounts often place Cleopatra outside the military story until she appears with supplies. Yet the assistance she brought mattered. Clothing, money, and food helped stabilize a battered force. A failed campaign changes the balance between allies. Antony needed resources more urgently. Cleopatra could demand stronger guarantees. Their partnership deepened after failure, not because both had forgotten politics, but because politics left fewer alternatives. Octavian controlled the West. Antony's eastern position depended increasingly on Egypt. Cleopatra's security depended on Antony remaining strong enough to deter Roman annexation. In Alexandria, they presented a vision of royal order during the ceremony, later called the Donations of Alexandria. Antony and Cleopatra appeared before a public audience with their children. Titles and territories were assigned symbolically across the eastern Mediterranean. Caesarion was proclaimed son of Caesar and king of kings. Cleopatra was queen of kings. Their children received grand regional designations. The ceremony did not instantly create a functioning empire under the children. Much of the territory remained contested or outside their practical control. It was dynastic theater, a claim about the future, yet claims matter. By naming Caesarion as Caesar's son, Cleopatra challenged Octavian's monopoly on Caesar's legacy. By placing children on thrones, she announced that her dynasty intended to survive beyond her. To Alexandrian spectators, the event may have drawn on Hellenistic royal traditions. To Romans hearing Octavian's version, it sounded like Antony had distributed Roman lands to a foreign queen and her children. The same ceremony could appear as legitimate monarchy in one city and betrayal in another. Octavian's genius was to ensure that Roman audiences heard only the second interpretation. He had already spent years building a public identity as Caesar's lawful heir, defender of Italy, and restorer of order. Antony could be portrayed as unstable, excessive, and increasingly foreign. Cleopatra became the perfect explanation for his supposed transformation. If Antony made a decision Octavian disliked, the queen had manipulated him. If he adopted Eastern ceremony, she had corrupted him. If he recognized his children, she had trapped him. This propaganda allowed Roman men to avoid admitting that another Roman man had consciously chosen a competing political vision. Antony was no innocent prisoner. He was an experienced leader, making calculated decisions, some wise and some disastrous. Yet portraying him as bewitched made Octavian's enemy look weak and Cleopatra look monstrous at the same time. The campaign drew on older Roman fears. Roman literature often contrasted disciplined Italy with a luxurious East. Eastern monarchies were imagined as wealthy, soft, theatrical, and dangerous. A queen who spoke languages, controlled treasure, and used divine imagery fit the role beautifully. Misogyny and suspicion of monarchy joined with fear of foreign power. Cleopatra's actual appearance mattered less than the idea of her. Octavian did not need Romans to believe she was the most beautiful woman alive. He needed them to believe she was persuasive enough to unmake Roman masculinity. The charge was not that Antony admired a pretty face. It was that he had surrendered Roman self-command. Poets gave the enemy emotional color. Speeches repeated rumors. Coins and public rituals emphasized Octavian's authority. Antony's absence from Italy allowed his rivals to define him. Cleopatra had no direct way to answer Roman audiences in every forum and town. Her government could mint coins and communicate through allies, but Octavian controlled the narrative where the final political decision would be made. The conflict was still, at its heart, a Roman civil war. Many Roman senators and soldiers supported Antony. Many of his officers had served Caesar. Octavian could not easily declare war on all of them without reminding Italy that Romans were again killing Romans. He solved the problem by directing the formal declaration against Cleopatra. Rome would not officially fight Antony, its former triumvir. It would fight the foreign queen who had supposedly captured him. This legal framing turned domestic rivalry into national defense. It also prepared the story that would survive. When Octavian won, he could claim he had saved Rome from Egypt rather than destroyed his last Roman competitor. Cleopatra understood the danger. She also understood that abandoning Antony would not guarantee safety. Octavian could not comfortably tolerate Caesarion, a young king publicly called Caesar's son. Egypt's wealth tempted conquest. A queen who surrendered early might still be displayed in a Roman triumph and removed from power. Neutrality was disappearing. The alliance began preparing for war. War preparations exposed the strengths and weaknesses of their partnership. Antony and Cleopatra assembled ships, soldiers, money, grain, and allied rulers along the Greek coast. Their fleet included enormous warships designed to carry troops and endure ramming. Their army contained experienced Roman legions. Cleopatra contributed a substantial Egyptian squadron and helped finance the campaign. On paper, they possessed the resources to challenge Octavian, but armies do not live on paper. They eat, become sick, quarrel, desert, and wait. A vast force concentrated far from its supply base required ports, roads, animals, fresh water, and reliable local support. Octavian's commander Agrippa attacked these foundations rather than rushing toward a dramatic battle. He captured positions along the coast, threatened communications, and made the enemy's impressive numbers increasingly difficult to feed. Antony's command also suffered political tension. Some Roman officers resented Cleopatra's presence and feared that Octavian's accusations looked more convincing with an Egyptian queen inside the camp. Cleopatra had every reason to remain near the treasury and fleet she provided. Yet her visibility gave rivals a symbol. Several high-ranking men defected, carrying information and worsening distrust. Disease spread during the long summer. Ancient camps crowded people beside animals, waste, stagnant water, and unfamiliar climates. Illness could weaken a force more effectively than arrows. Men who had marched through battles found themselves defeated by fever or contaminated water. The longer Antony waited, the stronger Octavian's strategic position became. The final confrontation took place near Actium on the western coast of Greece. Modern maps make the location look calm. In the late summer of that year, the narrow waters held fleets whose crews knew that the political future of the Mediterranean depended on the next hours. Octavian's ships were generally smaller and more maneuverable. Antony's heavier vessels could be formidable if they closed distance and used their soldiers effectively. Cleopatra commanded, or at least accompanied, the Egyptian reserve. 60 ships remained behind the main line with the treasury and equipment needed for escape or continued war. This arrangement is important because it suggests that withdrawal was considered before the battle reached its crisis. The popular picture of a queen suddenly panicking and sailing away because the noise frightened her rests more comfortably in propaganda than in military planning. The fleets moved slowly. Ancient naval combat required coordination. Without modern communication, oarsmen followed shouted orders and signals. Marines waited on decks. Archers and artillery crews prepared missiles. Wind direction mattered. A damaged oar bank could turn a warship into a drifting obstacle. Smoke, shouting, and distance made it difficult for commanders to understand events beyond their immediate view. At some point, a gap opened. Cleopatra's squadron raised sail and broke toward the open sea. Antony followed with a small group of ships. Later, Roman narratives made this the moment love defeated duty. The general supposedly abandoned his men because he could not bear separation from the queen. That interpretation became emotionally irresistible, which is one reason it survived. The more practical possibilities are less tidy. The breakout may have been a planned attempt to save the treasury and continue the war from Egypt. The main fleet may already have been trapped. Antony may have decided that preserving command resources mattered more than sacrificing everything in a hopeless engagement. Or confusion may have transformed a planned maneuver into collapse. The sources do not let us watch the command meeting where the decision was made. What we can say is that the withdrawal failed strategically. Many ships remaining at Actium surrendered or burned. Antony's land army held together for days, perhaps expecting his return, and then negotiated. The alliance lost not every soldier or every coin, but something harder to restore: confidence. Once commanders believed Octavian's victory inevitable, each man had an incentive to defect before his neighbor did. Cleopatra reached Egypt before news of the defeat could provoke rebellion. She understood that a kingdom often collapses first through expectation. If officials believed the queen was finished, they might withhold taxes, change allegiance, or open negotiations with Octavian. Returning quickly allowed her to maintain ceremony and order while she searched for alternatives. She and Antony still possessed resources. Egypt had fortifications, ships, money, and geography. They explored ways to defend Alexandria, negotiate, flee, or shift power toward the Red Sea. Ancient reports describe attempts to move ships overland or prepare an escape toward Arabia. Such plans reveal that Cleopatra's mind remained active. She had survived exile once. She considered whether survival could be engineered again. But the strategic world had narrowed. Client kings changed sides. Roman officers departed. Herod, ruler of Judea, secured his own future by making peace with Octavian. Antony's reputation suffered further. Octavian advanced slowly, allowing fear and negotiation to weaken resistance before his army arrived. He did not need to destroy every opponent if they destroyed their alliance themselves. Cleopatra opened private channels with Octavian. This has sometimes been portrayed as betrayal of Antony, though negotiation was exactly what a ruler responsible for a kingdom was expected to attempt. She may have asked whether her children could inherit Egypt. She may have offered treasure or political cooperation. Octavian wanted surrender, control of wealth, and ideally, the queen alive for his triumph. The negotiations carried an impossible tension. Octavian could promise safety without defining its form. Cleopatra knew Roman triumphs. Captured rulers were displayed before crowds as proof of conquest. Some survived afterward, but the humiliation itself destroyed royal identity. She had spent her reign presenting herself as queen and pharaoh. To walk chained behind Octavian's chariot would make her final public act a performance of his power. Antony attempted to defend Alexandria when Octavian entered Egypt. Some of his forces deserted. Naval units changed sides. The remaining resistance failed. Then, a false report reached Antony that Cleopatra had died. Ancient accounts differ in details and may shape the scene for tragedy. Believing the queen dead, he tried to kill himself with a sword. The wound did not end his life immediately. He learned that Cleopatra was alive inside the monument where she had secured herself and treasure. Because the entrance was sealed, Antony was lifted through an upper opening. Plutarch describes Cleopatra and her attendants pulling the dying man upward with ropes. The image is physically awkward, painful, and unlike the polished death scenes of later painting. Antony died with Cleopatra. Whether his final words were preserved accurately is doubtful. Ancient historians often supplied speeches suited to character and drama. The emotional truth needs no invention. A Roman leader who had once commanded armies across the Mediterranean reached the end inside an Egyptian queen's fortified chamber while his last rival controlled the city. Cleopatra now met Octavian directly. She was no longer the young exile who could surprise Caesar inside a bundle of cloth. She faced a man who had spent years preparing to defeat her image as well as her army. Ancient accounts describe her appearing ill, grieving, or carefully dressed depending on the scene. Each author had reasons to interpret her behavior as performance. She may have attempted to persuade him. Why would she not? Conversation had been one of her greatest tools, and negotiation had saved her before. But Octavian was not Caesar, and the political circumstances were different. Caesar had needed a stable ally. Octavian needed Egypt and the elimination of competing claims. Cleopatra had less to offer than she once had because he was already winning. Octavian also had to keep her alive. He feared she might destroy herself and deny him the spectacle of a triumph. Guards watched her. Her treasure was inventoried. The mausoleum and palace held enormous wealth accumulated by the Ptolemaic dynasty. This treasure would help Octavian pay soldiers and stabilize his new regime. Egypt's defeat financed the birth of imperial Rome. Cleopatra asked permission to visit Antony's tomb. According to ancient tradition, the scene may reflect literary shaping, but it captures her awareness that time was closing. Soon afterward, she returned to her quarters, bathed, dressed in royal clothing, and ate a final meal. She sent a message to Octavian asking to be buried beside Antony. Her death became the most famous mystery of her life. The cobra, hidden in a basket of figs, is the version repeated most often. The snake, usually called an asp in ancient texts, fit Egyptian royal symbolism and offered painters a dramatic object. Yet delivering and controlling a venomous snake would have been difficult. Different species, bites, and doses produce unpredictable results. Other ancient accounts mention poison concealed in a hollow hairpin or a prepared toxic mixture. Cleopatra may have studied poisons, or at least tested their effects, according to hostile and sensational traditions. We cannot know which story is true. What seems likely is that she planned her death and that two attendants, Iris and Charmian, died with her. When Octavian's men entered, they found the queen dressed royally. Charmian was said to be adjusting Cleopatra's diadem even as she collapsed. A guard criticized the act, and Charmian supposedly replied that it was fitting for a descendant of kings. The exchange may be literary invention. It survived because it offers Cleopatra what Octavian's triumph would have denied her: a final scene controlled by her own court. She was 39 years old. Her reign had lasted more than 2 decades. With her death, the independent Ptolemaic monarchy ended. Octavian annexed Egypt and treated it as a territory of exceptional importance. Senators could not enter without permission. The grain supply came under Roman control. The wealth of the Nile now served the emerging imperial system. Caesarion tried to escape, or was persuaded to return. Octavian ordered him killed. A saying circulated that too many Caesars were not good. Whether the phrase was spoken exactly as later authors record it, the logic was clear. As long as a young man called son of Caesar lived, Octavian's unique claim to Caesar's inheritance remained less secure. Cleopatra's other children survived. Alexander Helios and Ptolemy Philadelphus disappear from the record after being taken to Rome. Cleopatra Selene lived, married Juba of Mauritania, and became a queen in North Africa. Through her, aspects of Ptolemaic and Egyptian royal culture continued in another court. Cleopatra's dynasty did not vanish completely. It changed geography and form. Octavian celebrated victory in Rome. An image of Cleopatra, perhaps shown dying with a snake, was displayed because the living queen could not be paraded. The substitution reveals the limits of conquest. He controlled Egypt, treasure, and official narrative. He did not control Cleopatra's body in the triumph. Her suicide prevented the final humiliation he had designed. Soon, Octavian became Augustus, the first Roman emperor in all but name. He claimed to restore the Republic while holding unmatched authority. The war against Cleopatra helped make that transformation acceptable. He had not destroyed a Roman rival, the story said. He had saved Rome from a foreign queen, Eastern luxury, and monarchy. The irony is sharp. Rome condemned Cleopatra as a monarch while accepting Augustus. It feared that she would help make Antony a king, while allowing Octavian to construct a durable one-man regime. The language changed. The reality of concentrated power remained. Cleopatra lost, but the Republican world her enemy claimed to defend did not survive her. Her defeat, therefore, marks more than the end of ancient Egypt's last dynasty. It marks a hinge between political eras. The Hellenistic kingdoms created after Alexander had gradually fallen under Roman influence. With Egypt annexed, the richest remaining kingdom joined Rome. The Mediterranean became more fully organized around imperial rule, yet the story told afterward narrowed. Cleopatra, the administrator, faded. Cleopatra, the speaker, linguist, temple patron, strategist, and economic ruler, became harder to see. In her place stood Cleopatra, the seductress. That figure served Roman victory so well that later cultures inherited it almost without noticing where it came from. The queen had lost the war. The propaganda began its much longer reign. Recovering the ruler beneath that propaganda requires a different kind of attention. Instead of asking whether Cleopatra matched a modern idea of beauty, we can ask what her government left behind. Coins, papyri, temple reliefs, decrees, inscriptions, and archaeological remains do not provide a complete biography. They do, however, return us to the daily work of monarchy. A papyrus can preserve a tax decision without recording the queen's mood. A coin can reveal a title without explaining a conversation. A temple wall can show royal ceremony without telling us whether Cleopatra personally visited on the day depicted. These sources are quieter than Plutarch's banquets, but they are less interested in turning her into a moral lesson. One famous document contains a royal command granting a privilege to a man connected with Antony. At the bottom appears a Greek word meaning "make it happen," written in a different hand. Some scholars have proposed that the subscription may be Cleopatra's own writing. The identification is not certain, but the possibility is appealing because it presents royal authority in its simplest form. Not a crown, not a barge, just a brief instruction that moved an administration. Even if the handwriting is not hers, the document reflects the world she governed. Petitions moved upward, orders moved downward, scribes copied, registered, and enforced decisions. Officials negotiated exemptions. Individuals used personal connections to gain favor. Cleopatra's court combined ancient Egyptian institutions, Greek administrative traditions, and the pressures of Roman alliance. This bureaucracy could be efficient and oppressive at once. It supported temples, fleets, royal workshops, and grain distribution. It also collected taxes from people with little room to resist. Farmers might encounter the queen not as a charismatic speaker, but as a demand recorded by a village scribe. The same reign could appear glorious from Alexandria and exhausting from a rural field. Understanding this difference protects us from replacing one romantic myth with another. Cleopatra was not a modern reformer trapped in antiquity. She did not rule for national self-determination in the contemporary sense. She was a Hellenistic monarch, defending a dynasty, extracting revenue, rewarding allies, and removing rivals. Her intelligence made her effective within that system. It did not remove the inequalities on which the system rested. At the same time, she appears to have responded to crisis with practical measures. Grain regulations during shortage, attention to currency, and continued support for economic networks suggest active government. Alexandria needed food. Soldiers needed pay. Temples expected patronage. Merchants needed stable weights, safe ports, and enforceable contracts. A queen who ignored these tasks would not remain powerful for 21 years. The city at the center of her rule deserves attention. Alexandria was built along the Mediterranean coast, near the island of Pharos, and its famous lighthouse. Harbors opened toward maritime trade. Broad streets, royal quarters, sanctuaries, workshops, markets, and crowded residential areas created a city of sharp contrasts. Greek speakers, Egyptians, Jews, sailors, migrants, soldiers, scholars, and enslaved people shared urban space without sharing equal rights. Cleopatra's palace occupied a royal district whose exact shape is now partly lost beneath modern construction and the sea. Earthquakes, subsidence, and coastal change have submerged sections of the ancient waterfront. Columns and statues recovered from underwater hint at a ceremonial landscape once visible to ships entering the harbor. Visitors approached a capital designed to impress before they reached the queen. The lighthouse itself was more than a navigational aid. It announced technical power and royal investment. The library and scholarly institutions announced intellectual prestige. Temples announced divine legitimacy. Warehouses and docks announced commerce. Alexandria presented the Ptolemaic monarchy as a bridge between Egypt and the Mediterranean. Cleopatra inherited this message and used it at a moment when Rome threatened to become the only center that mattered. Beyond the city stretched the Nile Valley. River travel connected court and countryside. Grain moved north. Officials moved south. Messages, soldiers, taxes, and religious processions followed the water. The difference between Alexandria and an agricultural village could be enormous. In the capital, political rumor changed by the hour. In a village, the urgent questions involved irrigation, seed, debt, family labor, and the arrival of the tax collector. Cleopatra's ability to speak Egyptian may have carried special significance in this landscape, yet it should not be turned into a simple claim that she became fully Egyptian while her ancestors remained foreign. Identity in Ptolemaic Egypt was layered. Language, legal status, city citizenship, religion, family origin, profession, and local community could all matter. A person might use a Greek name in one document and an Egyptian name in another. Cleopatra herself belonged to a Macedonian dynasty that had ruled Egypt for centuries. Her paternal ancestry is relatively clear within that dynasty. Her mother's identity is uncertain, which has encouraged modern arguments about her ethnicity. Because the evidence is incomplete, confident claims that she belonged entirely to one modern racial category go beyond what can be demonstrated. Ancient Mediterranean identities did not map neatly onto modern categories. The Ptolemies were rooted in Macedonian Greek royal tradition, but generations of life in Egypt shaped their monarchy. Cleopatra used Egyptian language and imagery more extensively than earlier rulers. Her political world included Greek, Egyptian, Jewish, North African, Arab, Roman, and other communities. Reducing her to a modern identity label can repeat the same mistake as reducing her to beauty. It replaces complexity with a symbol. Her appearance has become part of these arguments because people hope the face will settle the question. It cannot. Coin portraits communicate dynastic authority. Temple reliefs follow Egyptian conventions. Marble heads may be idealized or misidentified. Skin color is not reliably preserved by unpainted stone, and ancient sculptures were often colored in ways now lost. No image can provide the certainty demanded of it. The strongest approach is to keep several truths together. Cleopatra was a descendant of the Ptolemaic royal house founded by a Macedonian companion of Alexander. She was born and ruled in Egypt. She learned Egyptian and participated in pharaonic traditions. She governed a multicultural kingdom. The missing pieces of her maternal ancestry remain missing. None of these facts cancels the others. The debate also reveals how strongly later societies want to possess her. European painters remade her as European. Colonial writers treated Egypt as an exotic stage for Rome. Modern audiences seek representation, ancestry, and historical justice. These desires are understandable, but the ancient queen does not always cooperate. She belongs to a world with categories of its own. The same care is needed when discussing her scholarship. Cleopatra was certainly educated. Plutarch's admiration for her language ability is unusually specific, yet claims that she authored surviving books on cosmetics, medicine, philosophy, alchemy, or gynecology are difficult to verify. Ancient and later texts circulated under famous names because a prestigious attribution made knowledge easier to sell. A work credited to Cleopatra might have been written by another woman, a group of practitioners, or a later author adopting royal authority. The name Cleopatra was not unique, and confusion accumulated across centuries. It is possible that the queen took interest in medicine or scientific questions. It is not responsible to assign every later recipe bearing her name to her personal laboratory. This uncertainty does not diminish her intellect. Political intelligence is visible in action. She mastered the expectations of several courts. She survived in exile by building a military coalition. She persuaded Caesar to hear her case. She governed through years of Roman upheaval. She recognized the value of language, religious symbolism, spectacle, money, and dynastic presentation. She also made serious mistakes. Her alliance with Antony failed. Their strategic position before Actium deteriorated. The donations gave Octavian material for propaganda. Remaining visibly present in Antony's camp may have alienated Roman supporters, even if her resources made that presence necessary. A capable ruler is not one who never miscalculates. History offers no such rulers. The temptation to make Cleopatra perfect often grows from frustration with the old caricature. If hostile writers called her corrupt, later admirers may call every action brilliant. But a human Cleopatra is more interesting. She could be courageous and ruthless, learned and superstitious, pragmatic and theatrical, careful in one crisis and wrong in another. Her survival for so long depended not on perfection, but adaptation. Adaptation began each morning. Somewhere in the royal quarter, attendants opened shutters or curtains. Scribes arrived with documents. Messengers waited after journeys by river or sea. Priests requested support. Merchants sought privileges. Military officers reported costs. Foreign envoys prepared gifts and phrases. The Queen's day was filled not by continuous seduction, but by decisions. Some decisions were ceremonial. Which title should appear on a decree? Which festival deserved royal attendance? Which temple should receive land or funds? Other decisions were financial. Could a district meet its tax assessment after a poor flood? Should grain be released? How much bronze coinage was needed? Still others were diplomatic. Which Roman commander would survive? Which client ruler could be trusted? Which request could be delayed without becoming refusal? A ruler who spoke several languages could choose when to surprise an envoy. She might begin through an interpreter, allowing formal procedure to establish rank, and then answer directly. She might use Greek with one visitor, Egyptian in a temple setting, and another regional language in private conversation. The performance would feel effortless only because preparation had made it possible. At meals, luxury served politics, imported spices, fine vessels, musicians, scented oils, and carefully arranged seating told guests that Egypt remained prosperous. The Queen did not need to consume every dish. Abundance itself was the message. A visitor who saw overflowing tables might report that Cleopatra could finance fleets. A visitor who heard scholars at dinner might report that Alexandria remained culturally superior. At religious ceremonies, the message changed. Priests, incense, sacred boats, hymns, and offerings connected the monarchy to cosmic order. The Queen appeared not merely as owner of wealth, but as guardian of balance. Such ceremonies could reassure communities that foreign alliances had not separated the dynasty from Egyptian tradition. At coin mints, portrait, weight, and inscription condensed these messages into metal. The Queen's strong profile was not an accidental failure to flatter. It could express maturity, continuity, and command. Modern viewers, trained by photography, ask whether the coin is realistic. Ancient users may have asked whether it looked royal. Cleopatra's face on those coins aged with her reign. She did not disappear behind an eternally youthful ideal. This, too, challenges the beauty myth. Her value as sovereign did not depend on remaining a young woman at the moment Caesar first met her. By the time of Actium, she was an experienced ruler in her late 30s, a mother, diplomat, and veteran of repeated crises. Octavian's propaganda needed to deny that maturity. It presented her influence as erotic enchantment because Roman audiences understood seduction as illegitimate female power. A queen who persuaded through reason might deserve respect. A temptress who controlled through desire could be hated without examining her arguments. The distinction shaped history long after every witness was gone. The surviving Roman and Greek authors did not all write the same Cleopatra, but they wrote within a world shaped by her defeat. Horace celebrated the end of a threat to Rome, calling her a mad queen before allowing her a measure of courage in death. Virgil folded the conflict into a national epic, placing Roman gods and Eastern monsters around the Battle of Actium. Propertius turned her into an immoral foreign enemy whose fall confirmed Roman destiny. These poets were not filing neutral reports. They were helping a new regime explain itself. Augustus needed the violence of civil war to become a story of salvation. The dead queen offered a villain who could be admired just enough to make victory impressive, but condemned enough to make conquest righteous. Her courage at the end could remain because courage defeated by Rome proved Rome's greatness. Later historians inherited this framework. Plutarch showed more interest in personality and moral character. His Cleopatra is intelligent, charming, theatrical, and powerful, Yet his biography is ultimately the life of Antony. She enters the story because she helps explain the Roman man's rise and fall. Her government appears only when it affects him. Cassius Dio wrote still later, under the Roman Empire. His narrative includes speeches and motives that reflect literary construction. He could describe Cleopatra as seductive, calculating, frightened, brave, or deceitful, according to the needs of the scene. These contradictions do not make the sources useless. They remind us that ancient history was written as moral and political literature, not as modern documentary transcription. The Queen's own version is largely absent. Perhaps court histories once existed in Alexandria. Perhaps official records described Actium, the Roman alliance, or her final negotiations from the Egyptian perspective. If so, they did not survive in a form we can confidently read. Victory determined which libraries continued copying which stories. Silence can create the illusion that the defeated had nothing to say. Cleopatra's government certainly produced announcements, titles, decrees, diplomatic letters, and ritual texts. Egyptian priests recorded royal benefactions. Greek officials managed archives. The loss is not proof that her reign lacked an intellectual defense. It is proof that preservation is political. After antiquity, Cleopatra's image traveled through changing moral worlds. Early Christian writers could treat her as an example of luxury, sexual danger, pagan excess, or tragic pride. Medieval readers encountered her through classical summaries, moralized history, and lists of famous women. She appeared less as a carefully reconstructed monarch than as a recognizable lesson about desire and power. The Renaissance revived interest in ancient biography and drama. Artists loved her death because it combined beauty, royalty, nudity, exoticism, and tragedy in one scene. The snake became a visual signature. A painter did not need to label the canvas. A crowned woman holding an asp was Cleopatra. The method of death, uncertain to historians, became the most certain part of her artistic identity. European artists also gave her the bodies, clothing, interiors, and faces of their own societies. She might resemble a Venetian noblewoman, a French court beauty, or an English actress. Egyptian settings became collections of pyramids, sphinxes, curtains, and imagined luxury. Historical accuracy mattered less than emotional recognition. Shakespeare's play transformed her again. His Cleopatra is witty, volatile, theatrical, sensual, aging, politically dangerous, and magnificently alive. The drama drew heavily from Plutarch, but created a voice that has shaped every later portrayal. Audiences remember her moods and speeches, even when they have never opened an ancient history. The play also preserved something closer to Plutarch's emphasis on presence. Shakespeare's Queen cannot be reduced to static beauty because language is her force. She controls scenes through speech, interruption, humor, anger, and imagination. Yet the tragic love story still overwhelms the administrative reign. Egypt becomes the place of emotion, Rome the place of discipline, even when the play complicates both. In later European art, Cleopatra became a safe way to display forbidden themes. Painters could show luxury, erotic danger, suicide, and female authority, while claiming classical seriousness. The Queen's death allowed beauty and punishment to share the canvas. The viewer could admire her body while accepting that excessive ambition ended in ruin. Colonial attitudes added another layer. European powers increasingly imagined the East as sensual, irrational, luxurious, and passive. Cleopatra was placed inside that invented East, even though the historical queen was a Greek-speaking Macedonian dynast ruling an Egyptian kingdom in a complex Mediterranean world. Orientalist art surrounded her with servants, incense, jewels, dark interiors, and waiting Roman men. The composition told a political story familiar to empire. The East possessed wealth and beauty but lacked discipline. The West possessed order and therefore deserved victory. Augustus's ancient propaganda found new life inside modern imperial culture. Cleopatra remained dangerous, but her defeat appeared inevitable. Archaeology complicated the picture. Coins showed a face unlike popular painting. Temple reliefs showed pharaonic presentation. Papyri returned attention to administration. Underwater discoveries near Alexandria suggested the scale of the royal quarter. Yet archaeology could also feed sensationalism. Every unidentified statue became the true face. Every tunnel became the path to the tomb. Every snake image became proof of death by cobra. The search for Cleopatra's tomb continues to attract attention because an undiscovered royal burial promises a final answer. Perhaps a body, inscription, or portrait could settle the mysteries. But Alexandria's ancient landscape has been altered by construction, earthquakes, subsidence, water, and later occupation. Ancient testimony suggests Cleopatra and Antony were buried together, probably in or near Alexandria. The exact location remains unknown. Sites beyond Alexandria have been proposed, including temples associated with Isis and Osiris. Excavations have produced important Ptolemaic discoveries, but no universally accepted tomb of Cleopatra. Responsible archaeology distinguishes between a site connected to her period and a grave proven to contain her. Popular headlines often cross that distance before the excavators have finished a sentence. Even if the tomb were found, it might not answer the question people ask most often. A skull can be reconstructed in several ways. DNA requires secure comparison. Burial disturbance can mix remains. Royal portraits still follow convention. The queen's charisma would remain absent. The thing Plutarch remembered most clearly is the thing archaeology is least able to recover. Cinema supplied what archaeology could not. Silent films dressed Cleopatra in the fashions of their own moment. Later productions expanded palaces, armies, and costumes. The great mid-century spectacle, starring Elizabeth Taylor, fixed a particular image in global memory: dark hair, dramatic eyeliner, gold ornaments, and an entrance so large that history itself seemed required to step aside. The film's production troubles became legendary, reinforcing the association between Cleopatra and excess. Audiences saw a queen surrounded by wealth, while the movie itself consumed wealth. The actress's celebrity and romance merged with the ancient story. Cleopatra became not only a historical character, but a symbol of star power. No performance can be blamed for failing to become a textbook. Drama needs faces, emotion, conflict, and compression. The problem arises when repeated drama becomes substitute evidence. Viewers remember a private conversation invented by a screenwriter more vividly than a grain decree preserved on papyrus. Music and costume create certainty where historians have only probability. Modern documentaries sometimes correct one myth by building another. They announce that Cleopatra was not beautiful, as though Plutarch's sentence were a modern rating, but he did not say she was unattractive. He said her beauty was not uniquely incomparable, and that her personal charm became stronger through conversation. The responsible conclusion is not that she lacked beauty. It is that beauty alone does not explain her power. Coins should not be used as insulting caricatures either. A strong nose or chin does not make a face ugly. Modern beauty standards are not timeless measuring instruments. Coin engravers worked within conventions and on tiny surfaces. A portrait chosen for political authority may exaggerate features that communicated lineage. Comparing it with a studio photograph of a modern actress misunderstands both objects. The more interesting question is why audiences remain determined to rank her appearance. Few introductions to Augustus begin by asking whether He was handsome enough to rule. Caesar's baldness appears as an anecdote, not an explanation for his alliances. Antony's face does not determine whether his Parthian strategy was sound. Cleopatra alone is repeatedly asked to prove that her features justified history. This double standard began in her own lifetime. Female political skill was easily converted into sexual influence. A man who won support was persuasive. A woman who won support had seduced someone. A man who used ceremony displayed authority. A woman who used ceremony displayed vanity. A man who eliminated rivals protected the state. A woman who did so became unnatural. Cleopatra exploited femininity when it served her, just as male rulers exploited masculinity, ancestry, military dress, or divine favor. Appearing as Isis or Aphrodite did not make her less political. These images were political. Ancient audiences understood gods, beauty, fertility, victory, and kingship as languages of power. Her relationships with Caesar and Antony were real and important. Removing romance entirely would distort her life as surely as allowing romance to consume it. She had a child with Caesar and children with Antony. She shared years, risks, pleasures, and grief with them. Personal attachment and political calculation can exist together. Human beings do not separate their lives into neat departments. Caesar could value Cleopatra's company and Egypt's grain. Antony could love her and need her fleet. Cleopatra could care for Antony and negotiate territorial advantage. Their relationships became powerful precisely because private and public interests reinforced one another, until military defeat made both collapse together. The insistence that every feeling was fake makes her into a machine. The insistence that every decision came from love makes her foolish. The historical middle is richer. Cleopatra was a ruler whose intimate relationships were also state alliances, because monarchs rarely enjoyed private lives untouched by policy. Her children understood this reality from birth. Their names, titles, education, public appearances, and marriages carried strategy. Cleopatra Selene's later rule in Mauritania demonstrates how dynastic identity could survive defeat. She and Juba created a court where Egyptian, Ptolemaic, Greek, Roman, and North African elements met again. Coins of Cleopatra Selene included Egyptian symbols. Her capital displayed artistic and intellectual ambition. Through her, the memory of the defeated queen entered a new royal project. Augustus allowed this because the daughter no longer threatened his unique claim to Caesar. Dynastic survival was possible once it became politically safe. The mother did not receive that opportunity. Cleopatra's position, wealth, and son made retirement impossible. She could not become a harmless former queen, living quietly beside the Nile. Roman conquest required Egypt's monarchy to end. Her final choice was made within that narrow space. Whether we admire the choice depends on values Cleopatra did not share with us. Suicide in ancient elite culture could be framed as courage, control, despair, duty, or refusal of humiliation. Roman writers admired certain noble suicides even while condemning enemies. Cleopatra used a language of honorable death that her conquerors understood, and in doing so, she forced them to grant her dignity. That dignity survived the propaganda intended to destroy her. Even hostile traditions could not make her final scene small. Imagine one ordinary day near the middle of Cleopatra's reign, before the final war had become inevitable. Dawn reaches Alexandria from the east. The palace district receives the first pale light, while fishing boats move across the harbor and larger ships wait for pilots. The lighthouse stands beyond them, not as a romantic silhouette, but as working infrastructure, guiding grain carriers, warships, and merchants towards safe water. Inside the royal quarter, the queen's household is already moving. Servants prepare rooms. Guards change watches. Scribes arrange tablets and papyrus rolls according to urgency. A messenger from the south has arrived after days of river travel. Another carries news from Cyprus. A Roman representative waits with a request that sounds polite and expensive. Cleopatra's appearance that morning is unknown. She may wear Greek royal clothing, Egyptian ceremonial dress, or something practical for private business. Hair, diadem, jewelry, and cosmetics depend on the setting. The woman beneath them is not frozen in one famous image. She changes presentation because the tasks of the day change. The first report concerns the Nile. Measurements from several districts suggest what kind of harvest may follow. The numbers are not perfect. Local officials may exaggerate damage to reduce taxes, or exaggerate abundance to impress superiors. The queen does not need to know every canal personally. She needs to know which officials deserve belief and which numbers require another messenger. A priestly delegation follows. A temple requests confirmation of privileges or support for construction. The priests speak for an institution with land, workers, archives, and local influence. Refusing them carelessly could create resistance. Granting everything could weaken royal revenue. Cleopatra listens in the language most useful to the meeting and asks questions shaped by both ritual and finance. Next comes a dispute over trade. A merchant claims that an official seized cargo unfairly. The official claims the goods violated a royal rule. Somewhere behind the argument are fees, rival networks, and perhaps a bribe. Cleopatra may not decide the case herself, but her court chooses who investigates. Justice in monarchy often begins with access. At midday, foreign envoys enter. Their gifts are displayed before their proposals. Fine metalwork, horses, textiles, incense, or unusual animals can turn diplomacy into theater. The queen recognizes the message beneath each object. A costly gift might express respect, ask for military assistance, or hide desperation. She responds with gifts of her own, because generosity is measured against status. Conversation becomes her instrument. An envoy expecting a translator hears Cleopatra answer directly. Another discovers she knows the history of his ruler's family. A third receives a joke that relaxes the room before a difficult demand. This is the charm Plutarch struggled to describe. Not beauty floating above politics, but personality operating inside it. The meal that follows is part of the negotiation. Musicians play. Servants control pace and distance. Seating reflects rank. Egyptian, Greek, and imported foods communicate abundance. The queen chooses when to eat, when to speak, and when to let silence pressure a guest. No one at the table forgets that Egypt's fleet, treasury, and grain stand behind the conversation. Later, she reviews letters from Roman leaders. Each man signs as friend and asks like a master. One needs ships, another needs money, a third requests recognition for an ally. Cleopatra compares the letters with reports from agents in other cities. Roman politics changes rapidly, and the official message may already be outdated. She has learned not to confuse urgency with importance. A Roman commander may demand an answer immediately because delay weakens his position. The queen can use time. She can blame weather, ceremony, missing documents, or the need to consult officials. Delay is dangerous, but it is also one of the few weapons available to a kingdom facing a stronger power. Before evening, she appears in a religious setting. The Queen of Greek, speaking Alexandria, becomes visible within Egyptian pharaonic tradition. Priests recite titles. Offerings are made. The scene follows forms older than the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra does not improvise the ritual, but her participation shows that foreign policy has not erased sacred duty. People watching may interpret the ceremony differently. A priest sees confirmation of temple order. An Alexandrian courtier sees royal pageantry. A farmer who traveled for a festival sees the ruler who claims to maintain the land's balance. A Roman visitor sees something ancient and perhaps unsettling, a monarchy whose roots appear deeper than Rome's republic. Night returns to the palace. Lamps replace daylight. More documents wait. Somewhere in Alexandria, laborers unload grain. Bakers prepare dough. Sailors spend wages in crowded streets. Scholars debate texts. Families argue over rent. The Queen's public magnificence exists above a city too large and complicated for anyone to control completely. This imagined day is not preserved in one source. It is a reconstruction built from the work ancient monarchies had to perform. Its purpose is not to invent private thoughts. It is to restore proportion. For every famous banquet, there were months of administration. For every meeting with Caesar or Antony, there were hundreds of encounters with officials whose names did not survive. That ordinary labor is one reason Cleopatra's reign endured. Personal charisma can win a meeting. It cannot by itself keep warehouses operating for decades. Beauty can attract attention. It cannot manage a currency system. A royal lover can provide military protection. He cannot replace local government, temple relationships, and economic knowledge. Cleopatra's achievement was not that she made Rome disappear. She could not. Rome's size, military organization, and political ambition had overwhelmed kingdom after kingdom. Her achievement was that she delayed annexation and repeatedly found room to act inside a narrowing world. Egypt remained a monarchy under her when it might have become a province during her father's reign. Delay may sound like a modest accomplishment until we consider the pressure. Her father had been expelled. Her own brother's court drove her into exile. Caesar's victory restored her, but Caesar was murdered. Roman leaders demanded resources while fighting one another. Famine threatened stability. Rival relatives offered alternatives. Every alliance contained the possibility of conquest. She survived by making herself useful without becoming entirely subordinate. Caesar needed a stable Egypt. Antony needed eastern resources. Priests needed patronage. Merchants needed order. Soldiers needed pay. The queen placed herself at the crossing point of these needs. When that position finally failed, it was because Octavian no longer needed an allied monarchy. He could take the kingdom directly. The change from republic to empire made Cleopatra's strategy obsolete. Earlier Roman competition gave smaller states room to bargain. Rival generals needed allies. Once Octavian defeated all major competitors, bargaining space vanished. Egypt could no longer play one Roman power against another because one Roman power remained. This structural explanation is less dramatic than a story about fatal attraction. It is also more convincing. Cleopatra did not fall because her beauty betrayed her. She fell because the balance of Mediterranean power changed beyond her ability to reverse it. Her alliance lost a military contest, and the winner built a state strong enough to absorb hers. That does not mean individual choices were irrelevant. Antony's campaigns, Octavian's patience, Agrippa's naval strategy, defections, supply failures, and the decision at Actium all mattered. Cleopatra's own choices mattered. History is shaped by structures through human decisions, not by one or the other alone. The beauty myth hides this because it offers an easy cause. A beautiful woman enters. Men lose reason. Kingdoms collapse. The story asks nothing from the listener except fascination. The historical account asks us to follow debts, grain, dynastic law, religious legitimacy, language, fleets, and Roman constitutional crisis. Yet the slower account contains its own drama. a teenager driven from her capital, returns inside enemy lines. A queen trapped in a palace siege survives. A monarch learns the language her dynasty had ignored. A mother presents her son as heir to two traditions. A ruler watches one Roman protector die and negotiates with another. A defeated sovereign denies the conqueror his final spectacle. None of this requires her to be the most beautiful woman in the world. It requires courage, preparation, adaptability, and a willingness to use every available form of power. It also requires ruthlessness. Cleopatra ordered or benefited from the deaths of family rivals. She extracted revenue from subjects. She participated in a political culture where mercy could be fatal. The complete woman is harder to praise and harder to condemn. That is why the caricature survives. A seductress fits comfortably into a moral tale. A multilingual monarch defending an unequal kingdom against a larger, unequal republic forces more complicated judgments. Her story also reveals how gender shapes memory. Defeated male rulers may be called ambitious, proud, strategic, or tragic. Cleopatra became a body first and a ruler second. Even admiration could diminish her by suggesting that everything she achieved began with appearance. The correction is not to deny the body. Cleopatra lived through a body that aged, gave birth, became ill, appeared in ceremonies, and was watched by enemies. Her voice, expression, movement, and dress contributed to presence. Physical reality and political intelligence worked together. The mistake is making one visible element explain the whole life. Plutarch's description remains valuable precisely because it resists that reduction. People who met Cleopatra, he suggests, were affected by contact over time. The appeal grew in conversation. Her voice carried sweetness. Her speech moved across languages like an instrument. The metaphor returns agency to skill. A musical instrument does not play itself. It requires memory, timing, listening, and control. Today, Cleopatra continues to stand at the crossing point of history and desire. People ask what she looked like, where she was buried, what language she spoke at home, whether she loved Caesar, whether Antony ruined her, and whether the snake was real. Each question reveals something about the queen, but also something about the people asking. The search for her face reflects a hope that personality can be solved visually. The search for her tomb reflects a hope that archaeology can produce a final, undisturbed truth. The debate over ancestry reflects modern struggles over race, identity, and ownership of the past. The fascination with her romances reflects the enduring belief that private emotion explains public catastrophe. History rarely offers that kind of closure. A tomb may remain undiscovered. A coin may never become a photograph. A hostile source may preserve the only surviving version of an event. The historian works between confidence and restraint, saying what evidence supports and resisting what imagination wants to complete. Cleopatra is especially difficult because imagination has been working on her for more than 2 millennia. The layers cannot simply be peeled away until an untouched woman appears. Roman propaganda is itself part of her history. Shakespeare is part of her history. Paintings, opera, cinema, advertising, and political debate all reveal how later cultures used her. The goal is not to erase those later Cleopatras. They have artistic lives of their own. The goal is to stop confusing them with the ruler who lived in Alexandria. Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra can remain magnificent without becoming evidence. Shakespeare's Cleopatra can remain unforgettable without becoming a transcript. A Renaissance painting can reveal Renaissance ideas of women and empire, even when it tells us little about Ptolemaic Egypt. The historical queen emerges through comparison. When Plutarch praises her voice, We compare his moral purpose with other evidence. When a coin shows a strong profile, we compare it with dynastic portrait conventions. When a temple presents her as pharaoh, we compare it with Egyptian royal tradition. When Octavian calls her dangerous, we ask what political need the accusation served. This method does not produce a simple heroine. It produces a ruler who could charm and command, learn and calculate, protect a kingdom, and punish rivals. She operated within structures shaped long before her birth and made choices that affected millions of people whose names never reached our sources. Her subjects may not have agreed about her. Alexandrian elites, Egyptian priests, rural farmers, Jewish communities, Greek officials, soldiers, sailors, merchants, and enslaved workers experienced the monarchy differently. Some benefited from royal patronage. Some suffered taxation. Some admired the queen's religious presentation. Some may have considered the entire Ptolemaic household foreign. A reign is never one story. The palace records policy. The village records obligation. The victor records conquest. The defeated family remembers loss. Cleopatra's fame has encouraged people to treat Egypt as the background to her personality. But the kingdom was not scenery. It was the source of her power and the reason Rome fought to control her. The Nile Valley fed cities far beyond Egypt. Alexandria connected seas and continents. Temples held land, memory, and local authority. Royal workshops and ports supported armies. The queen's alliances mattered because her country mattered. Caesar and Antony did not approach Cleopatra merely because they enjoyed her company. They approached the resources and strategic position of Egypt through its ruler. This is also why Octavian could not leave her independent after victory. Egypt's wealth could support a rival. Its grain could influence Rome. Its monarchy offered Caesarion a platform. Annexation was not an emotional punishment. It was imperial strategy. The personal humiliation planned for Cleopatra served that strategy by showing that the old dynasty had been subordinated publicly. Her suicide interrupted the performance, but not the conquest. Octavian received the treasury, the territory, and the authority. Cleopatra kept only the manner of her final appearance. That narrow victory became large in memory because it was the last decision no Roman order could reverse. Ancient authors recognized the force of the act. Even writers hostile to her allowed courage into the scene. They could condemn the queen's life while admiring her refusal to be displayed. Death transformed the enemy from a threatening woman into a tragic figure safely contained by the past. Later ages found different uses. Some saw warning against lust. Some saw resistance to empire. Some saw female ambition punished by patriarchy. Some saw an African queen erased by Europe. Some saw a Greek monarch ruling Egypt. Each interpretation selects real pieces and arranges them according to modern needs. The safest conclusion is not that interpretation should stop. It is that interpretation should remain honest about its distance from evidence. Cleopatra can symbolize many things, but the symbol should not silence the historical person again. Return now to the coin. The queen faces right. Her hair is drawn back. The diadem identifies rule. The engraver has only a small circle of metal, yet he gives the profile enough strength to survive 2,000 years. The coin passed from hand to hand after the minting. It may have paid a soldier, purchased oil, settled a tax, or crossed a market stall in a city whose buildings are now gone. No one holding it needed to decide whether Cleopatra was more beautiful than Octavia, a modern actress, or an imagined Egyptian princess. The value of the object depended on royal authority. The face guaranteed weight, legitimacy, and the state's promise. It said that Cleopatra's government stood behind the exchange. That is, the face worth remembering, not because it is the only true portrait, but because it returns function to appearance. The queen's image did work. Her voice did work. Her language did work. Her ceremonies did work. Her relationships did work. Every part of her public identity served survival. For more than 20 years, that survival strategy succeeded. She began as a young co-ruler surrounded by hostile courtiers. She became an exile with an army. She entered a guarded palace and won a hearing. She endured siege and returned to the throne. She built alliances with Rome while protecting Egyptian monarchy. She raised children intended to continue a dynasty. She faced the final consolidation of Roman power and lost only after a campaign involving the greatest forces of her age. Measured against the impossible standard of permanent independence, she failed. Measured against the pressure surrounding Egypt, her endurance was remarkable. Many older and larger states had already disappeared. Her kingdom lasted until the political system of the Mediterranean changed around it. The end of her reign did not prove that Octavian's propaganda was true. Victory does not transform accusation into evidence. Antony's defeat does not prove enchantment. Actium does not prove panic. The absence of Cleopatra's archive does not prove she governed through romance. The real lesson is quieter. Power often belongs to the person who can understand several worlds at once. Cleopatra understood Greek royal culture, Egyptian religious kingship, Alexandrian commerce, and Roman competition. She translated not only languages, but expectations. She made different audiences see a ruler they could recognize. Translation has limits. Rome eventually demanded submission rather than cooperation. No amount of eloquence could change a military balance after Actium. Charisma opens doors, but it does not rebuild a lost fleet. Intelligence can delay conquest, not always prevent it. Still, the ability to delay mattered. It created years in which Egypt remained governed from Alexandria rather than Rome. It allowed a final Ptolemaic generation to grow. It preserved institutions and traditions that Augustus later had to appropriate rather than invent. Conquerors often claim they replace chaos. In Egypt, Rome replaced a functioning monarchy it had spent years undermining. Cleopatra's memory also survived because the propaganda never fully contained her. The seductress was meant to diminish her, yet it kept her present. The tragic lover was meant to explain defeat, yet it gave her emotional immortality. The exotic queen was meant to separate her from Rome, yet she became one of the central figures in the story of Rome's transformation. Now, scholarship can use that attention differently. Instead of asking whether her nose was too large for modern beauty, we can ask why the diadem mattered. Instead of calculating how many languages she spoke as though collecting trophies, we can ask what multilingual rule accomplished. Instead of imagining Caesar helpless, we can examine mutual advantage. Instead of blaming Antony's loss on love, we can study supply lines, naval strategy, and political legitimacy. These questions do not remove wonder, they deepen it. The more carefully Cleopatra is studied, the less she resembles a single legend. She becomes a young woman, learning inside a dangerous court, a sister in a dynasty that made kinship lethal, a mother arranging succession, a monarch reading reports, a diplomat choosing words, and a defeated ruler controlling the final scene available to her. Perhaps she was beautiful. Perhaps many people thought so. Ancient beauty was shaped by culture, presentation, status, health, movement, and voice, just as beauty is today. But the ancient testimony closest to the famous question points beyond the face. Her presence became difficult to resist because conversation revealed more than first sight. That may be why the modern myth feels both wrong and strangely close to the truth. People remembered being captivated. Later generations assumed captivity must begin with beauty. The evidence suggests it began with attention. Cleopatra made people feel the force of her mind, and minds leave fewer monuments than bodies. The monuments that remain ask us to listen carefully. A coin speaks of authority. A papyrus speaks of administration. A temple relief speaks of sacred kingship. A Roman poem speaks of fear. A play speaks of longing. A film speaks of celebrity. None speaks alone. Together, they describe not the most beautiful woman who ever lived, but one of the most persistently reinvented rulers in history. Behind every reinvention stands the queen herself, partially visible, never fully recoverable, still refusing to become only what her conquerors said she was. The silver coin rests in your hand. Turn it once more. The metal is cool. The profile remains steady. The queen does not smile for approval. She does not ask whether you find her beautiful. She wears the diadem and looks beyond the edge of the coin, toward a kingdom she held for as long as history allowed. That was always the greater achievement,